as leaders, sometimes you get further and further away from the reason you got into this business if you're not careful, right? You can find yourself in a lot of structural conversations, spreadsheet conversations, things that are critical, but they don't bring the same joy as spending time with clients and spending time with our people. So if you don't fill that joy bucket once in a while, it's bad. It's bad for business, it's bad for you.
Stepping into the leadership of a global powerhouse is never quiet, but doing so in the midst of a massive industry transformation is a true trial by fire. For Nancy Reyes and Chris Beresford-Hill, taking the reins at BBDO Americas has been about more than just maintaining a legacy. It's about architecting a future where tech and authenticity can coexist. Today, we explore how Nancy and Chris stay grounded, how they're tackling client fragmentation, and what they're looking for in the next generation of talent. I'm Luz Corona, and this is Campaign Chemistry. Hello, Nancy and Chris. How are you guys today?
We're good. We're good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. I know we were all adjusting our cameras. I just want to say you guys look great. Are you at 195 Broadway? Are you at Omnicom?
We are not. We're at 1285 6th Avenue.
Oh, are there any plans there for you guys to move down or not yet?
We are not there. We're not moving to 195, but we'll be moving to 220 42nd Street. So 42nd between 2nd and 3rd.
Gotcha. Okay. I only asked because Omnicom was my first agency. So that's why I...
You're at 195 Broadway?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Great location.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for our listeners, just a little bit of background here. Nancy and Chris have been at BBDO for a bit, but now new roles following the acquisition. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. My first question is, how's it going? I think it's been a whirlwind, but everybody's been hitting the ground running.
It's been crazy. It's been crazy. I don't think we're afraid to say that. I mean, good, all good. I think we're happy to get the acquisition behind us and now ready to do the real work, which is, with our clients, with our people and moving this thing forward. But it is intense in a good way. I think we're really looking forward to 26 and beyond. I think it was good to put 25 behind.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, that's what I'm hearing. You guys had Omnicom had a great big presence at CES. Nancy, you had a great moment on stage as well that I definitely want to ask you about. But first, I'd love to kind of give our listeners an overview of how we got here. So Nancy, do you want to give a little bit of an overview? You've been in ad agencies for most of your career and you've been here for a bit. Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I started in New York a long time ago now, it seems, as an AAE at an agency that doesn't exist anymore, called Darcy Macias Benson and Bowles. I think I really got the hang of advertising when I moved to San Francisco and joined Goodby Silverstein and Partners. That's where I met Chris. I think that's where I saw the power of creative. I remember seeing one television commercial a long time ago called Sheet Metal for Saturn. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing I had ever seen in my life. And it was like, okay, now we're talking about the real way this is going to work. So after doing that for a while, I went client side and I worked at Verizon for a bit, which was awesome because I think I considered myself a really good account person until I lived a year in client shoes. And I realized, my God, I have a lot to learn about how the business really works, what kind of impact we can have on the business, how much of a bigger impact advertising can actually have on the business of the brands that we work on. And then eventually found my way back to TBWA, where we reunited again. And we had a good run there for a bit, and then came to BBDO a couple of years ago with him again.
I love it. It's just meant to be. I think
I'm easy. I travel.
And now, Chris, what about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as well? Nancy just said you guys have crisscrossed a bit, but how did we get here?
How did we get here? So I started at also an agency that no longer exists. I don't know what that says about our impact or whatever. I started at a little agency in Boston called Modernista that was like super cool and small. And and that's where I sort of, I always wanted to, put an idea out into the world. And at that time, I'm not that old, but, the back of a magazine was potentially a place millions of people would see something. I don't think, there's probably like 5 magazines now, so it's not the same. Or if you got something on television at the time, you had a pretty good chance at getting like a big chunk of America. So I think, I dreamed of pursuing ideas and getting them out in the world. And talking about not only our journey, but how the landscape has changed. I met Nancy for the first time at Goodby, where I like to tell everyone I was a rather anonymous copywriter, and everyone knew was like the best person at Goodby.
That's not true.
Anyway, so that's how I was indoctrinated. But by the time, we teamed up at TBWA, I think we both sort of realized with Nancy's, very strong business mind, not just account management, but like obsession with client business, and my desire to get ideas in the world. I think we also realized that it was much more about kind of solving the business problem and not making the ads or the commercials. And now we find ourselves, here at BBDO in this, really important moment where we've got this incredible network and, kind of more than ever, our own journey as where you were inspired to the industry by a great piece of creative. I was obsessed with getting an idea into the world. I think today, the game has changed, and I think it's much more about using creativity to solve these big client business problems. And that's in many ways a lot cooler than a TV commercial or being on the back of a magazine. So that's what we're kind of fired up about doing this year.
Yeah. And I was just going to ask you that, Chris, like, since you've been in the creative space for so long and you clearly have such a passion for it, I was going to ask, what are the biggest challenges that creatives are facing today? I think anyone on the outside would be like, oh, AI, the threat of AI. But I think you're right. I think it is about creativity, proving business performance and all that. Is that what you're seeing on your end for creatives?
Definitely. I think a greater threat to advertising creatives than AI is advertising creatives that think they make campaigns, being obsessed with these things that we used to deliver that everyone saw. But right now, Nancy and I would expect our creative minds to not just be thinking about what the asset is or the video file, but if there's a problem where we put one extra brown M&M in every bag of M&Ms and that solves the problem, like we want people thinking about that. Like I think we want the case studies of these really incredible outcomes and business impacts we had as this incredibly high value business, strategic and creative partner, not someone that's sitting around hoping that the brief tells them that they need to have a 30-second unit so they could write a joke. So yeah, I think a fear. The big fear is just thinking that we still do the same thing we used to do. And, AI's cool. We like AI.
Me too.
Yeah. I have to write, sometimes I write detailed emails. And so I have to put it into AI because I write jumble. I have to tell her that I wrote it in AI because she'll know that I wrote it in AI. And make fun of me for writing it in AI.
So you add the disclaimer at the bottom. This was generated by AI.
I put it in my
Yeah.
There you go.
I love it. You guys seem to have such a good rapport. How does that come into play when you're working together? Like, and if you ever, I can't see you having contrasting ideas. Like, how would you describe your working relationship, especially now during this moment of transition?
Yeah. I think we've had contrasting ideas. The way, just because I think it's important, the way I remember the Goodby story is I think maybe the basis of why we have such good chemistry. I remember working with Chris. By the way, I'm going to tell you, he doesn't remember this. So this was meaningful to me. It wasn't.
Maybe it never happened. I don't know.
But we were working on a super difficult client, like a really, really jerk of a client. And I was getting the brunt of a lot of sort of bad client behavior. And after a particularly spicy meeting, CBH said to me, hey, if you ever want to talk about it, if you ever want to let me take a turn with the client, let me know, because I know what that's like. His, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, was an account person. So he really could understand, what we went through. And I remember him being like, wow, that was the first time I had somebody be like, can I take the load off of you on this? And that, for us, I think has been a big part of why we work well together, is we're proxies for one another. So you don't have to be in any one department to float into somebody else's area of expertise, so long as you have these common values, common beliefs, common ways of thinking and working, et cetera, that get us there. So that I think is a lot of what makes us a good team. And when we do have differences, I normally know the answer before he does. And he'll be like, when you said this, you were right. And I was just going to let you get there on your own. But anyway, it doesn't mean we don't disagree on things here and there, but they're the big things we see the exact same.
Yeah. Chris, do you have anything to add there?
No, I also think it's this sort of, I think we both have a healthy pessimism and like a kind of insane optimism, and I think, because, we went through, our office at the time, like, going into lockdown and COVID and kind of like the real, like you talk about an acquisition that had its own traumas, but I mean, that was a very traumatic time. And I think, you just kind of learn, you just find someone who's like your like resilience match, and you just kind of like start every day with like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. What are you going to do? Compare notes at the end of the day, but you just kind of have, you just have someone where you just go, we're going to figure it out. It's not going to be easy. And let's both acknowledge that we kind of like the pain train.
We like hard things.
Well, I love it because I feel like there's a mutual respect there. And I think that's key here, which is why this is working so well. Nancy, a related question to you, what I asked Chris before, but for you, client side, what are the bigger challenges you're hearing from clients, like around the business and things like that? A year ago, we were talking about tariffs, now like so much can happen in a year. So what are you hearing from clients, like the biggest challenges or things keeping them up at night?
Yeah, so we obsess over this a lot. We've got this this way of looking at all of the business problems that our clients are facing all around the world. We actually kind of put them through a tool, and then we segment them by vertical, by industry, by KPI, and so interesting things come up when you do things like that. So, for example, customer fragmentation is one of them. I mean, there are so many ways to reach people right now, so much competition in a particular market. It's not like it used to be where in an industry there was one or two key players. Usually any industry is dominated by, say, 3 to 4 big players and then a bunch of small disruptors. And clients and brands keeping up with those disruptors changing at scale is becoming a pretty significant problem. Associated with that, customer acquisition. There's so many to acquire customers today. What's the best way to do it? What's the best way to find the most valuable customers over a long period of time? And how do you sustain a lot of that? And then the last one maybe is more kind of brand focused as businesses become more versed in understanding the impact of a brand on the business. There's a question on how valuable the brand is when it's expressed across so many different spaces, so much media, AI, right? So we're really getting a dilution of the brand. If you asked AI any question about show me a car on a road, you probably see the exact same car on the exact same road. You can picture it in your head. So how to drive distinction in such a crowded marketplace to acquire these customers that exist in all sorts of places, while the more nimble ones do it faster, better. That I would say are the top 3 business problems, but all combined into one. It's a pretty tough market for a lot of clients right now.
Yeah. And I feel like consumer brand loyalty is not what it was before. And I say that because I'm one of them, right? Like I look for, like the cheaper deal, there's also like the economics of going on right now, and I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on the marketing, to be able to deliver.
Totally. It's the economics of it, but also, I mean, how many times have you been off of TikTok or Instagram that just kind of looked different and knew how to find you? It kind of knew you were looking for it. It got you at the right place at the right time. And you get a lot of these bigger businesses that are having trouble reaching those consumers in those particular moments. It's getting much more challenging.
Yeah, for sure. So now this brings me to my next question, because you're talking about audiences. I went through the Omni demo at CES. I still think about it, just how impressive the technology was. Is that something that's rolled out across the board, right? Like for your employees as well at BBDO?
It's absolutely rolled out for our employees. I think we've been working within the Omni system now for quite some time. Obviously, with the acquisition of IPG, you have all of the data inside Interact and all of their models and ways of working, and that data and those insights become that much richer. So all of that is now rolled out into the hands of our people. Of course, a lot of what we have to spend our time now with is just upskilling people and training them on all of the tools and technology so that they can access them the best way. It's one of the greatest things about the acquisition. I remember hearing John and Philippe talk about it. It's getting all of these tools and technology, all of this access into the hands of the most talented people in the world. And when you do that, then the value really starts happening. Then you see the magic coming into the marketplace. So that's a lot of what our focus is making sure that people have access to the tools and know how to use the tools.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to, do you have any more you can share there? Because when I sat down with Omnicom folks, I asked them too, because the demo was done by people who have been working in the platform for like a minute, right? So my question was, how are you ensuring that everything you're doing now is kind of taught to your workforce and making sure that they carry out this vision that you've set forth? Are you guys able to share a little bit about what that looks like at BBDO in terms of like upskilling or hiring talent?
Yeah, I have to say, I think Omnicom has been pretty great at this historically. I mean, when Omni was first introduced to its employees a long time ago, I think we all were trained on it immediately. We had access to it immediately. I think all of the were pushing it down. There were many meetings and sessions and training modules so that you could get upskilled on it. So I think the access to all of that training has always been there. I think the extra bit that the agencies bring to it is like, well, what are we going to do with these Omni tools? What are we going to do with all of the AI tools? How does it become more meaningful as a BBDO employee? In specifically so that it's not a commoditized tool that everybody's using, but that agencies, brands, people put value on top of it. So for example, when we talk about AI at BBDO, because we are about doing big things, because we are BBDO do big things, we believe AI makes us. It's not about making us irrelevant, making us more efficient, making us cheaper. It's not about any of that. It's about making our people and our talent that much bigger, our ideas bigger. So I think when you put it into that frame that people can understand, it's almost like you brand it, right? You brand your version of the tools, then people know exactly how to use it because they're already a part of a company that does big things.
Yeah, for sure. I was just blown away, because as I told you guys, OMD was my first agency and I was an assistant media planner, and sitting through the demo, I was like, this was what I did. And in that role 10 years ago, and we would have to take the 3 to 5 days, to put together the strategy and the deck. But it's not to say that it replaces the roles, because you still need the humans pulling the levers, right? Like you still need the right prompting. You still need, so I see a little bit of both now, but it really was so mind blowing. I was like, this is crazy. It took us like a week to do this back in the day.
Yeah, I know it's come a long way, but I do think that's the hardest part. I think sometimes for people is being like, wow, I used to do this. Now this thing does it for me. And then I think you kind of jump over that to be like, because this thing does it for me, imagine what I now can do as a result of this thing doing it for me. Like use it as a source of inspiration versus a source of like elimination, which I think is the first place that people go with it.
And also because you go, oh man, 10 years ago, I used to do this and it took me a week. And it's like, think about all the extra shit people ask you to do now. Like, our clients are demanding so much more of us that it's like, it's great to be like, cool, 2005 me's workload is done over here. So now I can do all this other stuff. I mean, that's the other thing is, it lets our ideas get bigger and it lets our thinking get bigger, but also frees us up to get a little bit bigger and a little, more upstream with our client partners when some of that work gets handled for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. It would have been great to have that when I was trafficking ad tags for the creative, but we're here, right? And I was able to see the process. Chris, I have a question for you. Just as we were talking about your career journey, right? And, talking back to your passion, and now you're in this leadership role. We recently had this op-ed that was almost like a call to action to hire up creatives. And it was like, keep your hands dirty, stay dirty, like get in the trenches, like do the work. Don't forget why you're doing the work, why you love it. How do you kind of keep a pulse on what resonates today in terms of creative? Like, how do you stay motivated and fresh and all that when you're in this position now of power trying to run this agency?
Of power.
Because it certainly doesn't feel that way. That's the other thing, by the way, is you think you have power, you barely have influence. You've got to work very hard to get people on the same page. But you can't really, the thing is, you can't tell anyone to do anything. So anyway, that's a whole other podcast. We'll do that one. We'll log back on. But I think on that one, it's funny because I feel like we've been talking about this in the last couple of days, but it is, everyone has to remain a practitioner because our business rewards people and raises people up based on talent, not on ability to do operations and things like that. And I think if you step out of it too long, if Nancy is going too much into, structural stuff and not dealing with the client, or if I'm not looking at work, you start to lose a little bit of that. And so I think, we have a way in which, certainly with some clients in America, we go very deep in the beginning and we help, bring clients into offices and then transition out, but then go back into, we're always practicing. I mean, we were just on a call about a brand strategy, the two of us, for something that we're, starting to work with. So I think you've got to find a lane to do the work and find a lane to do the work in a way that, that serves your offices and the teams that we get to work with. So a lot of it is Nancy and I going out and trying to find business problems to solve and find some clients to work with. And then there's always going to be big things that require the CEO, big moments like Super Bowl, where there's no way I'm not going to, look at things very closely. But I think we both stay really close to it. I think the second you turn into a figurehead or whatever, you got to sort of start making your retirement plan. You answer this better because I think okay, over.
No, you answered it well. Somehow I grew up with like a deep, dark fear of being overhead. I don't know where that came from, but I remember, I think it was like a Goodby thing. And I was at Goodby, it was like, I cannot be overhead. I want to make sure that I'm like critical, because I think it's terrible when you have a bunch of people directing traffic and not really doing anything. And to Chris's point, I think whatever you're suggesting becomes so irrelevant if you're not in the front lines of doing it. Like you have no credibility with your people or with your clients if you're not in the work, in the business. Not to mention, I was just having this conversation with somebody else. Like, I'm not afraid to admit it brings me joy. Like I as leaders, sometimes you get further and further away from the reason you got into this business if you're not careful, right? You can find yourself in a lot of structural conversations, spreadsheet conversations, things that are critical, but they don't bring the same joy as spending time with clients and spending time with our people. So if you don't fill that joy bucket once in a while, it's bad. It's bad for business, it's bad for you.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit. I want to get to Super Bowl, but CES. As I mentioned before, Omnicom had a big presence at CES, went through the Omni demos. Nancy, you had a great big moment, a nice big interview there on stage. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
I mean, I think the reason it was big was because I was sitting next to Gwyneth Paltrow, who was amazing. It was amazing. And the point of it was to just talk about influence and what constitutes influence today, how do brands behave differently, what remains true, what changes, et cetera. And she was great at talking about influence because just in her own career, from being an actress to being a businesswoman to coming back to being an actress again, she's done it with such a sense of authenticity. So much so that it doesn't matter that Goop isn't for everybody, right? I mean, think about how much heat Goop has been under, a lot of sort of attacks, questioning who it's for, who it's not for. And I think she's really smart enough as a businesswoman to say, my brand is not for everybody. It's for this group of people. I've tried to play around with this cohort or this cohort. And in the end, the influence only extends so far. But when you extend it in the places that it matters, where you really resonate with people, that goes deep and they're very loyal and they follow you over a period of time. So that was the point of the talk. It's much more interesting hearing it from Gwyneth than hearing it from me. But I do think she had great points about where brands get kind of confused in today's world. It's super easy to chase the next big thing just because it's the next big thing. And when we do it poorly, we sort of leave behind everything that preceded as if it didn't matter. And that's worrisome, especially because we know there is constant change. There's no shortage of the new tech, the new tool, the new platform, the new this, the new that. You may not belong there as a brand, and you have to be okay and confident in your brand to know that you don't belong there. But it is addictive, I think, for brands to want to be everywhere. And then to go back to that business problem that we started with, when you are everywhere, you mean less and less to the people that you need to mean more to, and that can actually drive your business forward.
Yeah. I can't help but think of Kevin Hart. I feel like he's in all the commercials. So we're just like, he's.
I mean, he's a
little lower.
But I think that, I thought Nancy did a very good job of in that conversation, been very easy to fawn over the Hollywood part of it. But I think you brought it back to marketing consistently. And it is there is this big trend that because it's possible and because you can be in a million places as a brand, that doesn't mean you should. It's really about where should you show up and how do you show up in a way that's incredible and impactful. And that is sort of a drug our industry has to get off of, which is the one where everyone believes you can hit a button and, users will, no one wants to hear from, their, tissue towel company all day. It's just a ton of things. But I think we've lost the plot on that a little bit, and that was a really good message, and I hope a lot of people heard it.
Yeah, and it's so relatable in advertising, right? Because it works the other way. Like sometimes, us as marketers, we might be quick to say, no, I didn't like that ad, or why this, but maybe it wasn't intended for us. As maybe we weren't the consumer for that. And I think
Kevin Hart commercials you keep seeing. One, not a Sam's Club user, not a Verizon
Chase.
subscriber, not a Chase Sapphire card holder,
or a Jumanji
shopper, not a Jumanji fanatic.
Most of them, I'm not going to lie, most of those ads do resonate with me. So, Kevin Hart was a bad example, but so now this brings me to the next big moment, Super Bowl. What does Super Bowl night look like for you two?
Oh man, I don't do anything. I've never gone to a Super Bowl party because I want to watch the commercials. But then if you go to an ad party, everyone watches the commercials and then talks through the game. And then if you go to a Super Bowl party, everyone talks through the commercials and watches the game.
Yep.
And I only, want to talk through YouTube or whatever. So I don't know. So I think I like to watch it alone and kind of absorb it all. I don't know. Do you? You guys do stuff.
No, I think it's just usually me and the kids, because I get excited to be like, that's from our agency. Although I have a feeling we're going to be traveling during Super Bowl.
So you want to watch it like Delta Lounge?
Yeah. I have a feeling we're going to be in London or something.
Why don't we tell some people at the airport we did some of these Super Bowl ads?
They'd love to hear from us.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty exciting.
We're going to be so annoying.
I'm not gonna lie, in a Delta Lounge, it would probably be a pretty nice setup to watch Super Bowl in there. I could see them doing it up.
They have a good setup there.
Yeah. So if you do have clients in the Super Bowl, is it kind of like a nail biter of a night for you? Do you check in on the client teams, or you just chill and you just enjoy the night?
If you're doing a Super Bowl campaign, you are 1000% texting with your client in the lead up to it, and with the teasers and with every headline that drops. So you're probably, but it is the most fun because it is like the Super Bowl of advertising, and it's not the most important necessarily work, but it's just the work that everyone pays attention to. And it's the one time around the world everyone becomes conscious of the ads, looks to become a bit of a critic. And also there's just this moment where entertainment value is like a inarguable premium. And it's and sometimes, in the day-to-day, you might get a little burdened down in the work you're doing. But in this case, every client, everyone participating knows that it has to be wildly entertaining. So I think it's so fun. And I think, I don't think we've really had any duds, and I don't think there's any duds this year. I think we were really good at it. Our teams are really good at it. And, I think Nancy and I both were texted and edit that, I don't know if you lied about crying, but I think I sort of cried a little bit.
No, I cried.
But it's I think the lineup this year from BBDO,
it's really good.
it's kind of a really different group of teams. Sometimes it feels like the agency has one little pocket where all the Super Bowl campaigns feel a little bit the same way. I think there's 5 from BBDO this year, 6 from BBDO this year.
Brands, right? 3 different brands. Yeah.
A couple regional, but 4 in-game, and they're all, and the work is very different, and it's really, really strong, and it'll be fun to see everyone's reaction to it.
Yeah.
At the Delta Lounge.
At the Delta Lounge. Well, I can't wait to see what comes out of BBDO. You guys spoke with my colleague, Bear Bell, Campaign Germany's editor-in-chief. And Nancy, you said something in that interview that caught my eye when it comes to U.S. markets. So, markets like Germany and Brazil are in an excellent position. The U.S. offices need a little bit more TLC, a little bit more support. So what is your plan there? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that article was probably a year and change ago, if I remember. It's quite some time ago. I think the U.S. is, for us, a big market. And yeah, it has always been a big market historically for BBDO. In the new world where we welcomed in the U.S. FCB, it becomes even bigger for us and even more important for us. And we have we're sort of a multi-office offering. So we've got, New York, we've got Atlanta, Minneapolis, the West Coast, Chicago. So it's a pretty diverse offering for us here. I think the success of the U.S. will come as it's already been coming due to the leadership that exists now across all of our different offices. We've got top talent. Again, we're so lucky to have welcomed the former FCB into the mix because we love the way they think about business, the sort of skills that they bring as leaders, feel really solid and very excited in New York and Chicago specifically where we see their impact. Not to mention we've got Scott Bell in North America now as the Chief Creative Officer, and his job is to look across a number of clients and lift that creative product so that we're connected back to the business challenges that we've been obsessing over and we've been speaking about. So when you kind of step back and look at that bench in the U.S., I was just saying this to somebody else in New York. It's like, I want to make sure the clients feel, and I know you agree with me, God, every corner I turn in the U.S. at BBDO, I see one more incredible talent. And that depth is pretty significant there. So I think we now got what we need to really push this, to the next level.
One of our last questions is we typically ask guests about emerging talent, like who they see as rising stars in the industry. Some people say it's people on their team. Some people say brands. But is there anyone or anything out there that you guys are keeping your eye on and you're like, they're onto something, or that's a challenger brand now, but someday they won't be, kind of a thing?
I think I'll answer this question more as like a type of person I think is a rising star, or certainly the type of talent we would value as rising stars. And that it's got to be the people who are so curious about business. I feel like we can't overstate this thing enough, this like business obsession that we have, especially because we are in such an insecure and dramatic industry that questions its validity all the time. The closer you stick to the business problem, the more successful you will be. So people who are naturally curious about businesses, industries, getting under the hood of that kind of stuff, that's where I think the rising talent is. So maybe a different way to answer the question. So it's not a brand, but it's a kind of person that I think is going to be super successful in this industry moving forward.
I love that. And that's, candidly, it is one of my regrets from being agency side. I wish I took more of an interest in some of the brands, because that really, it translates into passion, right? And, being able to deliver on the clients. So for any kind of emerging creatives or people entering our industry during this time of transition and change, for that advice, what do you suggest? Is it more reading the trades? Is it just kind of looking for taking a look under the hood on how businesses work? What would be some recommendations you have for emerging talent?
I think you have to be able to answer the question, how does a particular business make money? It sounds like it's simple, but it would surprise you how companies actually make money, whether it's a transaction, whether it's the sort of lifetime, existence of something, of a product. Is it subscription based? Is it transactional? Are there dividends associated with the company so that you know exactly how they're going to forecast their sales? Like, there's a whole world in there that we don't talk about enough in this business. You can get that in an earnings report or an annual report. You could do a lot of digging. You could use, Chat GPT and other materials. But if you ask the average person in this business, how does X brand make money? Could they answer it accurately? And I would say it is a lower percentage of the people that should be answering it correctly, given the impact that we want to make on a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And then, Chris, on a related note for you, I know you're more involved in business decisions now, but for the emerging creatives, what is your advice there on how to break into this industry that now, AI is involved and it's just a competitive kind of workforce? What's your advice for emerging creatives?
Well, I think the creatives that are going to be defining our industry in the years to come are going to be, frankly, probably better than my generation and generations before, because I think it's harder than ever to make something happen. I think the job used to be to make something, and now I think it's people that have to not only not take the brief that they're given, but understand the business context and have enough vision to actually drive an outcome, because I think the process is harder than ever. So I think the people that succeed are going to be real forces. And I think the next generation of creatives, the one after that, are going to be much more business minded and hopefully taken, more seriously than any other generation, because that's what it's going to take, and that's the people we get excited about are, I've seen a junior creative lead a client, but that's just a matter of having a really clear understanding of the task at hand, what the work on the table is doing to drive towards that task, and the vision and the mastery of that idea to talk through it. And so definitely seen some under 30s do that to some MBAs, and I'm like, more of that.
Yeah. It's so exciting to see like the kind of ideas that this next generation is coming up with, and just emerging creatives in general, regardless of age. Well, thank you, Nancy and Chris, for taking the time to talk to us. I know you both are very busy, and this was really enjoyable, and we're cheering for you. Good luck with everything else ahead of you.
Thank you. So nice to spend time with you.
Thank you very much.